It was just another bright morning train ride. Families chatting, kids laughing, workers typing away on laptops. Nothing seemed unusual until the doors slid open at 11:17 a.m. 7 men walked in. Hoodies, caps, cold eyes. They split into formation, like wolves surrounding prey. One slammed a heavy duffel bag on the floor. Another pulled a gun. Bang! A shot into the ceiling. Screams filled the carriage. Passengers dropped. Children cried. Chaos erupted. "This train belongs to us now," one shouted, his voice echoing, but in the far corner, a young black girl sat, perfectly still. A mask covered her face, her hood shadowed her eyes. While everyone else panicked, she didn't move, except for one subtle gesture, her hand slipping under her backpack to press a hidden switch. Nobody noticed. Not the screaming passengers, not the gunmen, but that one signal meant everything. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever witnessed a moment so terrifying, so unreal, it felt like a movie scene? Drop your answer in the comments below, because what happened next on that train will change how you see heroes forever. The terrorists thought they had control. They didn't know who was sitting right in front of them. Not a student, not a victim, not ordinary at all, and by the time they found out, it was too late. The train sped across the countryside, cutting through fields glowing under the late morning sun. Inside, it was a picture of normal life. In one carriage, a grandmother passed cookies to her grandchildren. In another, 2 businessmen debated stock prices over black coffee. College kids laughed quietly over shared headphones. It was the kind of everyday peace no one expected to break. But peace doesn't last when predators walk among you. The 7 men who had stormed in weren't amateurs. They were organized. 2 at the front, blocking the doors. 2 moving down the aisle, snatching phones and throwing them in a pile. 2 more checked bags, unzipping cases, searching. And their leader, tall, scarred, his jaw set like stone, stood in the center, his gun raised, eyes daring anyone to resist. Passengers obeyed. They lowered their heads. Some sobbed, others prayed. A child whispered, "Mommy, what's happening?" Her mother pulled her close, whispering back, "Don't look, just stay quiet." But one passenger didn't panic. In the back corner, the girl with the black mask sat upright, her hood still up, her breathing steady. Her eyes moved with precision, counting steps, noting weapons, studying movements. She wasn't like the others. She didn't tremble. She didn't cry. She waited. Most people saw 7 men with guns. She saw something else. The way they moved told her they'd trained together. The hand signals, the code words in a foreign tongue, the weight of the duffel bag that wasn't luggage at all. It wasn't just a robbery. It wasn't random. And that made her decision clear. She couldn't just survive this. She had to stop it. The leader barked orders. Car by car, we control everything. No resistance, no heroes. His men obeyed, spreading out further. One stood over the pile of phones, stomping each one under his boot. Another pulled a young man from his seat, demanding to know if he was military, if he carried ID. The man stuttered, denied, pleaded. A fist across his jaw silenced him. He crumpled, his girlfriend crying out. The leader smirked. Fear was spreading, just as planned, but he didn't see her. The masked girl reached into her bag again, fingers brushing against a small black device. Not a gun, not a knife, a slim transmitter, silent, undetectable. She pressed a sequence. The screen lit for half a second, then dimmed. A code sent. Somewhere beyond the countryside, a server received it, encrypted, secure, and waiting. The passengers thought they were trapped with 7 armed men. What they didn't know was that they were also sitting with the one person trained to end this, no matter the cost, and she was only just getting started. The train clattered on, racing over steel rails, but inside, time felt frozen. Every second stretched thin with fear. The 7 men were in control. Their leader's voice cut through the carriage like a blade. Everyone stays down. If anyone moves without permission, they die. One of his men yanked a passenger's briefcase from the overhead rack, spilling papers across the aisle. He kicked them aside, laughing. Another demanded wallets, jewelry, watches, not because they wanted them, but because stripping people of dignity made the power sweeter. A young mother tried to shield her crying toddler. A gun barrel pressed. To her temple silenced her faster than any threat. The child wailed. The men laughed. It wasn't just about control. It was about humiliation. Breaking spirits before breaking bodies. At the far end of the carriage, a man in his 50s, gray hair, strong jaw, slowly stood. His hands were raised, his voice calm. "Please, let the children go. Take me instead." The leader turned his head, studying him for a long, tense moment. Then he smiled, a cruel, chilling smile. "Sit down," he said, "or I'll make you an example." The man hesitated. One step forward, a fist crashed into his stomach. He fell, wheezing. A boot pressed into his back. He didn't move again. The passengers lowered their heads even further. No one else dared speak except her. Not out loud, not yet, but in silence, in calculation. The masked girl adjusted slightly in her seat, her fingers brushing against her backpack. She pulled out a small folded piece of black cloth, wrapping it around her wrists under the table. It looked like nothing, but it was, reinforced, designed for grip. Not an ordinary strap, a tool. She adjusted her breathing, steady, deep. Her eyes tracked the leader again, then the man with the duffel bag. She knew enough already. Explosives. If they reached the engine, it wouldn't just be one carriage destroyed. It would be everyone. And that meant she couldn't wait forever. The clock was already ticking. One of the terrorists barked an order. 2 of his men began moving toward the connecting doors, stepping into the next carriage. More passengers. More hostages. The leader checked his watch. A signal. They were on a schedule. The girl leaned back, her hood shadowing her face. She tilted her head just enough to see the reflection in the train's window. The blurred figures of 2 men moving closer, checking each seat. She had seconds. Her thumb slid over the transmitter again, pressing another code. 3 pulses this time. Then silence. Somewhere, far away, the signal spread. But inside the train, no one noticed. Leader turned, his voice sharp. "In 10 minutes, we stop the train. Everyone out. Those who cooperate live. Those who resist." He lifted his pistol, tapped it twice against the ceiling, and let the silence finish his sentence. Passengers sobbed quietly. A boy clutched his father's arm. An elderly woman clutched her cross. 7 men with guns, dozens of terrified passengers, and 1 masked girl who hadn't moved. But what no one knew was that she was about to change everything. The hum of the train filled the silence between threats. Wheels thundered against the tracks, but inside the carriage every sound belonged to the men with guns. The leader glanced at his watch again. Then he gave a signal. 2 men dragged the gray-haired passenger, the one who had stood up, to the center aisle. They forced him onto his knees. His face was pale, his breaths sharp. The leader crouched down beside him. His voice dripped with mock kindness. "You want to be a hero?" He patted the man's shoulder. "Heroes die first." The man's wife cried out, begging. A rifle butt slammed against the wall near her head. She fell silent. The passengers had been humiliated. Now, they were about to be broken. The leader pulled his pistol from its holster, slowly, intentionally. The silver gleamed under the carriage lights. He held it to the man's head. The girl's eyes narrowed beneath her mask. Her hands flexed around the strap hidden beneath the table. She had planned to wait, to time it perfectly. But this couldn't wait. The leader's finger tightened on the trigger. Suddenly, a crash echoed through the carriage. One of the overhead bags fell, bursting open across the aisle. Passengers gasped. The leader twisted his head instinctively, just for a second. And in that second, the girl moved. She rose silently, her hood falling back, mask fixed firmly. Her stride was swift, her grip steady. Her hand snapped out, yanking the leader's wrist away just as the gun fired. The shot rang. Out, thunder in the carriage. A light shattered overhead. Passengers screamed, but the bullet never touched the kneeling man. For the first time, the power shifted. The leader staggered, shocked. His eyes widened as he saw her. Not a frightened passenger, but something else. Calculated. Trained. "Who are you?" he hissed. Her voice was calm, low, controlled. "Your worst mistake." Before he could respond, her elbow slammed into his jaw. His pistol clattered across the floor. Chaos erupted. The other terrorists roared, guns raised. Passengers screamed, ducking beneath seats. A woman shielded her child. The air was fire and panic, but she was already moving. 7 men against 1 woman. But this was no ordinary woman. She grabbed the fallen pistol, sliding it back with one hand. The closest terrorist lunged. She ducked, drove her knee into his stomach, and sent him sprawling. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the narrow carriage. Sparks burst from the walls as bullets tore through metal. She dove behind a seat, returning fire with cold precision. 1 shot, 1 man down. Passengers huddled together, trembling. But their eyes were no longer hopeless. For the first time, they saw resistance. The leader scrambled to his feet, clutching his bloodied jaw. Rage twisted his face. "Kill her! Kill her now!" Bullets flew. Glass shattered. Smoke filled the carriage, and in the chaos the masked girl whispered to herself, "Not today." Bullets tore through the carriage, shattering glass, ripping into the metal walls. Smoke thickened, burning the passengers' lungs. Mothers clutched their children, fathers shielded families with their bodies. But in the middle of the chaos, one figure refused to back down. The masked girl moved like water through stone, swift, sharp, controlled. She dove between seats, her body low, pistol aimed with unshaking precision. Bang! 1 terrorist collapsed, his rifle clattering from his grip. Bang! Another screamed as a bullet sliced his shoulder, forcing him back. The passengers gasped. It wasn't luck. It wasn't panic. Every shot was calculated. For years, she had trained for moments just like this, breaching compounds in foreign deserts, chasing fugitives across city alleys, neutralizing threats before most people even saw them. Now, all of it was being unleashed. Not for her country, not for glory, but for these innocent lives trapped. In a steel coffin hurtling down the tracks, the leader snarled, rage boiling in his voice. "Spread out, surround her, she's just 1 woman." But his men were shaken. They had stormed this train expecting victims. Instead, they found a predator. The masked girl moved again, sliding into the next carriage. She ducked behind a service trolley, her eyes scanning the reflections in the shattered windows. She could hear their boots pounding against the metal floor, hear their ragged breaths, their fear trying to disguise itself as anger. 3 men advanced cautiously. Another circled wide, trying to cut her off. She waited, calm, listening. Then, silence. Her hand flashed to her belt, pulling a compact flashbang no one had seen before. She rolled it across the aisle. A deafening boom exploded with blinding white light. The terrorists screamed, clutching their eyes, staggering like blinded giants. She moved instantly, her strikes fast and brutal. A sweep kick, an elbow, a disarm, Rifles clattered to the floor. Within seconds, 2 men were down, groaning and helpless. The passengers stared in awe. Some whispered. Some cried. But none could believe what they were seeing. One young boy, clutching his mother's hand, whispered, through trembling lips, "Mom, she's a hero." The masked girl didn't pause, didn't acknowledge it. She couldn't. Not yet. The leader roared from the far end of the carriage, dragging a young woman from the crowd and pressing a knife to her throat. His voice cracked with fury. "You think you're winning? I'll kill her right now." Passengers froze in horror. The masked girl's pistol was steady, her eyes locked on him. "You won't," she said flatly, his brow furrowed. "Why not?" "Because you need her alive. You need leverage, and leverage only works if I care." Her words cut through the carriage like steel. The leader faltered, just for a second, and in that second, she fired. The bullet didn't hit him. It shattered the knife from his hand. Sparks flew. The blade spun across the floor. The hostages gasped. The leader staggered back, his arrogance fracturing into fear. The balance had shifted. 7 terrorists had boarded this train with total control. Now, with smoke filling the air and bodies strewn across the aisle, only 3 remained standing. And for the first time, they realized the truth. This wasn't their train anymore. The train roared across the tracks, wheels shrieking against the steel rails. Smoke curled through the carriages. Passengers held their breath, too afraid to move. 3 terrorists still stood. Their leader, his pride shattered but his rage blazing, barked orders with desperation. "Kill her! End this now!" The masked girl moved like lightning. Her body low, her steps precise, her eyes cold as ice. 2 men charged together, rifles raised. She didn't flinch. Her pistol barked. Bang! Bang! 1 man dropped instantly, the other staggered, clutching his bleeding leg before collapsing. Only 2 remained. It was no longer a fight. It was survival. It was fury. It was 1 man's ego against 1 woman's unshakable will. The leader ripped the assault rifle from his fallen comrade and unleashed a spray of bullets down the carriage. Passengers screamed, ducking under seats, holding onto each other as metal shredded walls and glass burst into shards. But she was already gone, sliding under the seats, weaving like a shadow, her mask glowing faintly in the flashing light. She moved so fast he couldn't track her. Then she rose. 1 hand grabbed the barrel of his rifle, twisting it aside. The other slammed into his chest with a strike so hard it sent him stumbling back into the wall. He roared like a wounded beast, dropping the rifle and swinging his fists wildly. He was bigger, stronger, fueled by rage. But she was precise, disciplined. Every move she made was sharp and calculated. Punch, block, elbow, knee. The sounds of impact echoed like thunder through the carriage. He caught her once, a brutal strike, across the face that sent her crashing into a row of seats. Gasps erupted from the passengers. Was it over? Her head dropped for a moment, blood seeping from beneath the mask. Then she stood, her shoulders squared, her breathing steady, her eyes like fire through the smoke. The passengers fell silent. She whispered, almost too quiet to hear, "Not today." And then she attacked. She struck with everything: speed, fury, precision. A spinning kick to the ribs, a knee to the gut, an elbow to the jaw. The leader stumbled, blood spraying from his mouth, his body crashing into the window. The train rattled violently, the world outside blurring. He lunged 1 last time, knife flashing in his hand, but she was faster. Her arm caught his wrist, twisting it until the blade clattered to the floor. Then, with 1 final strike, a crushing uppercut, she sent him collapsing into the aisle, unconscious. Silence. Total silence. The fight was over. The passengers erupted. Cheers, tears, applause. They rushed to her, hands reaching, voices shouting gratitude, relief, awe, but she said nothing. She only adjusted her mask, holstered her pistol, and checked the frightened faces around her. "Everyone safe?" she asked. Mothers nodded, holding their children tighter. Fathers lowered trembling hands. The young boy from earlier whispered, again, louder this time, "She's a hero," and for the first time, she allowed herself the smallest smile. The train slowed at the next station, brakes screeching as the wheels ground against the rails. Smoke drifted across the platform. The world outside had no idea of the war that had just taken place inside. The doors hissed open, passengers poured. Out, some stumbling, some carried, many still trembling. Mothers clutching children, fathers shielding families, strangers holding on to each other like lifelong friends. And at the center of it all stood her, the masked girl, silent, unmoving, watching them leave with steady eyes. A crowd had gathered on the platform. People gasped, whispered, lifted their phones to record. In seconds, the news would spread. A mysterious masked woman saved a train full of passengers from terrorists. A man in his 60s, his shirt torn, his face streaked with tears, stepped forward. His voice shook. "You saved my grandchildren. I'll never forget you." She only nodded. Another passenger whispered, "She's a legend." And in that moment, standing tall against the daylight, mask cracked, blood still on her cheek, she became exactly that. Not a face, not a name. A symbol, a reminder that courage wears no uniform, and sometimes heroes walk among us in silence. She turned, her footsteps quiet as she slipped through the crowd. No interviews, no glory, no spotlight, just shadows. But before she disappeared entirely, she felt a vibration in her pocket, her burner phone. She lifted it. The screen glowed with a single line. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 begins at midnight. Her chest tightened. The terrorists on the train hadn't been the end. They had only been the beginning. She lifted her mask slightly, just enough to breathe. For the first time all day, her composure cracked. Voice on the other end of the line whispered coldly, "This was never about the train. It's bigger than you think. Much bigger." And then the call ended. Her eyes narrowed. The war wasn't over. It had just started. She pulled her mask back down, melted into the shadows, and vanished into the city. But one thing was certain. When midnight came, she'd be ready. If you want to see what happens in Phase 2, drop a comment below. Do you think she'll stop the next attack? Or is she walking straight into something even deadlier? Tell me your thoughts. I read every single one. And if you loved this story, don't leave yet. Check out our previous video. Cops raided a black old man's home at 3 a.m., but they feared what they found inside. It's on your screen right now. Tap it and see how one man and his bear took on the impossible. Smash that like button so more people see this. Share it with someone who believes heroes can rise from anywhere. And subscribe to Black Response, because this is only the beginning.